greenhouse gas emissions are cut drastically, if ecosystems are allowed to recover, they will begin to sequester that carbon, and the planet can begin to heal, but only if we act soon.
So, we want to be candid with you for a number of reasons. One being that so often when someone talks to us about environmental issues, we feel that they're not telling us the whole story, that they're hiding the truth from us, and we have no intention of doing that here. We want to be as honest as we can with you. Now, we want to be clear that the law is not the basis of legitimacy for us. Life, this earth, the land, is the basis of legitimacy for us. Because the land is primary. The land is what gives life. Laws are simply rules made by rich people that are used to maintain the status quo, and that statement is historically defensible. Dr. Stephen Best, professor of philosophy at the University of Texas, said that if the law won't do the right thing, other people will have to do the right thing, and they'll have to do the right thing by breaking the law. And that precedent has been set many times throughout our history. But what is the right thing? Well, I think we have models of the right thing all around us if only we would listen and pay attention. Salmon make the world a better place simply by being salmon. Brown pelicans make the world a better place simply by being brown pelicans. Douglas fir trees make the world a better place simply by being Douglas fir trees. The Lummi Indians, before their traditional way of life was destroyed and their land stolen by the dominant culture, made the world a better place simply by going about their lives, by giving back to the land as much or more than they took from it. They made the world a better place simply by being humans. It should be obvious by now that the law is not making the world a better place. In fact, the law requires that the land be destroyed. That mandate is built into its very structure. And so a question I'll ask all of you here, where does your allegiance lie? Does it lie more with abstract human ideas of nation states and government? Or does it lie with the real physical world? The world that is being drawn and quartered? That's an important question that we need to be asking ourselves. So with that being said, I believe it's useful for us to ask, how will environmentalism in the next generation look? What can we expect? When I look at what we have now, at the general feeling of the environmental movement, I'm worried. Sometimes I wonder if it even makes sense to refer to it as the environmental movement, if it really is a movement. Because movements, generally thought, are when groups of social actors sustain a certain degree of confrontation with political or other elites in the name of a larger goal. And I don't see that happening right now in any meaningful way. I see a bunch of really great people whose hearts are in the right place and who are doing some amazing work, but they don't understand what it will take for us to win this. We've been going to those in power as if they were our masters, asking them nicely to solve these problems when we should have known from the beginning that it would be us or no one. To underscore all of this, we need to be aware of the timeline we're facing. On climate change, the general position is that we have until 2020 to cap emissions, and until 2050 to reduce emissions by 80 to 90%. If not, we'll push far beyond an atmospheric carbon concentration of 450 parts per million, possibly beyond 650 parts per million, and the effects of that would be catastrophic, as we know. Simply put, it's not an option. If those in positions of authority won't stop it, we will. So how might an actual environmental response look? Well, it would have clear and reachable goals, such as an end to all Earth-destroying practices. And I think that's a modest goal, really, and I think that most, if not every, non-human species would agree with this. Take salmon, for example. We know what is killing salmon. Dams, industrial logging, industrial fishing, industrial agriculture because of chemical runoff, and the burning of fossil fuels. These things must stop. If you think you can reform them from within, go for it. I personally have no interest in that approach, and I think it could never work on its own, unless it's part of a larger strategy. Now, on the one hand, these industrial systems are long-established practices organized by major institutions, and so they might seem untouchable. They seem so far beyond you and me here. On the other hand, if it's understood that these practices must be stopped, it doesn't matter how established they appear. We will find a way because it's our survival at stake. And lucky for us, the reality is that these practices aren't invincible. They're far from it. Sectors of the government are frequently taxed with inspecting the power grid, the railways, industrial infrastructure in general, and the results are fairly consistent that even by their standards, they're amazed that some of these things are still standing. So here's an alternative scenario to the first one I mentioned, to the one that Max mentioned. It's decided that carbon emissions have to be reduced by 80 to 90% by 2020. It's recognized that no government will in any way pursue that target. This means that we must stop these practices. The immediate problem we run into is that the majority of the population would never support us and would likely be the first ones to come down on us. Fishing, logging, agriculture, these are people's jobs, no doubt. And governments haven't done anything to create other options for people. But regardless, these practices have to stop because the planet is primary and future generations are going to be more grateful to have a healthy land base with more biodiversity to support them than they will be to live in the last gasps of a fundamentally suicidal industrial economy. The planet takes precedent over the economy, because if we don't have healthy ecosystems, we can't even have an economy. So then the question becomes, can we do this without the majority of the population? Well, minority groups have shown throughout history that yes, it is possible to accomplish large tasks without the help of the majority. So yes, we can. Then the question becomes, how can we do this without the majority? And at this point, we keep coming back to the following strategy. Nationwide or global actions taken by coordinated groups of individuals that would cripple the key nodes of industrial infrastructure that are most responsible for the prospect of catastrophic climate change. We mean business, literally, we mean industry. The extractive industries, the refining industries, the industries that daily drive us closer to a certain apocalypse. None of this is out of the question. It is not impossible. In fact, it's much more possible than I think many of us imagine. It's doable. We might think it is impossible only because no one has done it yet. When I talk about industrial civilization and the global economy, I'm not talking about monolithic structures towering over us. I'm talking about an unstable system of technologies being used for resource extraction and distribution that are primarily serving a small, elite portion of the population. So let's say that that works. Let's say that groups of people are able to significantly disrupt the workings of US industry, which could happen in many different ways. We'd see an immediate reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, the scale of which most environmentalists would wet their pants over. If it was effective enough that the grasslands were allowed to return, even just on the land east of the Mississippi River, instead of the agriculture that's occurring there now. In a decade, we'd see a huge percentage of the carbon released since the Industrial Revolution onward pulled back into the ground, and we'd see the Earth begin to recover. This is what excites me. This is the only strategy I've ever been presented with that actually accounts for my desire for a planet to live on in 50 years. It's the only strategy I've seen that clearly shows this is how you can both prevent the destruction of the planet and leave a place inhabitable for future generations. My wager with people is modest. I tell them, if you don't like this strategy, give me another one that works, another one that leaves us with a place to call home. Now, these coordinated actions against industrial infrastructure that I'm talking about, if they were to happen, would be accomplished by a very small percentage of a movement. Only 1% to 2% of traditional occupational resistance movements ever pick up arms. The other 98% is doing support work. But right now, we don't even have a movement that can support that 1% to 2%. We don't have a movement that can provide loyalty and material support to underground activists. What we're proposing here to you is that we build that movement. It is being built as we speak, but we need your help. In order to pave the way for a resistance movement that will confront the systems that are destroying the planet, we're going to need to build an oppositional culture that will be able to provide that loyalty and material support to those who are willing to resist. The above-ground, culture-building wing of this movement has a unique position. It operates with the understanding that above-ground organizing up to this point has been largely ineffective, while at the same time recognizing that above-ground work is extremely important. There is an entire spectrum of work to be done, from immediate actions that directly confront power to organizing for a multi-generational grassroots movement. Now, we can be sure that one of the first things we should be doing is forming groups and organizations that are explicitly oppositional. We need organizations that are dedicated to building leadership, providing educational materials for other groups, coordinating events, grooming speakers and workshop facilitators to travel and present. But we also need more localized affinity groups that are focused primarily on local issues. These will be the groups that conduct targeted campaigns to protect ecosystems and disrupt or halt destructive activities. And if you're going to be in one of these explicitly oppositional organizations, it would probably be a good idea right away to learn your constitutional rights, have a good understanding of methods of state repression, and develop a strategy to ensure the survival of your group in the face of such repression. repression. And of course, universities like this one could be used for oppositional purposes. Throughout history, universities have been hotbeds of resistance, but only recently, especially after the increasing corporatization of the education system, have universities become places more conducive to mindless career training rather than mindful change-making. We need to change it back. So many of you, maybe all of you, don't see clearly how you can practice an effective opposition. You may not see any avenues open to you. I want you to know that everyone is in a position to contribute to the dismantling of this system. We can't provide each of you with a blueprint for your actions. We can only suggest what to do in general terms. And you will have to be the ones to find a way to achieve your goals. It's not possible through solitary withdrawal like an embittered hermit, trying to prepare yourself for the inevitable, nor is it possible to topple the system overnight. No, it can only be done by the cooperation of many convinced, committed, energetic people. People who are agreed that the best thing for life on planet Earth is the end of industrial civilization. At all points, we must oppose industry and the industrial economy. We must strike where it is weakest and we are strongest. We must bring this insane culture to an end. If civilization is allowed to continue trundling on, tearing and ripping the earth to pieces, the consequences will be immeasurable and horrific, much more so than if we bring it down now. And so I ask you as human beings, why do we hesitate and procrastinate in the hope that someone else will raise their arm in the defense of the earth and future generations? Has the fire of life not given you the strength or the will to fight? Have we become so corrupted and spiritually crushed that we do not even see the necessity of coming together to stop this culture's atrocities ourselves? If everyone waits until someone else does what needs to be done to stop the earth from being killed, it will be too late. It already is too late for the passenger pigeons, the 70 million bison, most of the indigenous people of the world. So much old-growth forest, so much grassland, so much life, and so much diversity. And you know, simply from a personal standpoint, why do we put up with this shit? I've seen it in the eyes of so many people, especially young people my age. We're yearning for freedom. This life is poisonous and oppressive to our very beings, and we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's leading us down a dead-end road. We're tired of working for a wage. We're tired of spending the majority of our waking hours doing things we'd rather not be doing. We're tired of being told what to do and when to do it. We're tired of being given choices that seem more and more meaningless. We're tired of seeing more and more of our loved ones die of cancer or some other disease that didn't even exist before the advent of civilization, before the advent of agriculture. We're tired of feeling lonely, depressed, and anxious. And are we really surprised at the increasing rate at which young people are committing suicide? Because I'm definitely not. Without community and freedom, both of which civilization systematically destroys, the human animal ossifies. Our spirit shrivels and atrophies, and we become walking shells of our true selves. When we're born into this world, and as children we go through that process of wonder and amazement, as we discover all the different emotions and feelings that humans are capable of experiencing, it is tragic and unforgivable that many of us come to be acquainted the most with feelings of boredom and loneliness, depression and pain, resentment and lack of belonging. I've seen this. I've experienced this. This culture chokes the life out of our very beings as much